بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله الأمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We move on in our study to the book Umdatul Ahkaam. The following hadith is hadith number 283, narrated by Jabir ibn Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with him and with his father. And who would read this for us? Brother.
Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah radiallahu anhu, Allah's Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave a verdict regarding Shuf'ah in every undivided property. But if the limits are defined or distinguished and the ways and streets are fixed, then there is no Shuf'ah.
Okay, this hadith is about Shuf'ah. And what is the meaning of Shuf'ah? Shuf'ah is the right to take a partner's portion by force when he is selling it with the price that he's selling it for. And it has conditions, it has rules. So, first of all, the Prophet is saying, alayhi salatu wasalam, that it is the right of the partner. He gave the verdict regarding Shuf'ah in every, and this is one of the conditions, undivided property. So what is the meaning of undivided property? The Prophet says and explains in the same hadith, alayhi salam. He says, but if the limits are defined, the borders are defined, this is yours, this is mine, the streets and the ways are fixed, then it is easy to identify that this portion of the land is yours, this portion of the land is mine. Likewise, if we have a big house and you have your own duplex and I have my own duplex, there is no sort of mixing in things. In this case, there is no Shuf'ah. What is Shuf'ah? The Shuf'ah is the right to protect my property. Me and this brother, we have a land and we are partners. But the land is undefined in the sense that there are no roads, there are no markings. I have 50% and he has 50%. But which 50%? This is not identified, and this is called musha', meaning that this is public between all of us. And we can't say that this is mine, this is yours. In this case, if I get a buyer and he says, listen, this is 100,000, I'll take your 50% of that plot. I say, okay. Islam says that my partner, if he hears of this, he has all the right to come and say, I object. Here is 100,000. He gives it to the buyer. The partner has no right in saying, I change my mind, I don't want to sell. Or he cannot object and say, no, I don't want to sell it to you. I want to sell it to XYZ. This is not his right. As long as he is selling it, the owner, the other partner, has the right of Shuf'ah. The buyer does not have the right to object by saying, no, I don't want your 100,000. I want my share in the land. Because there is harm on the first partner, the one who did not sell. And usually, when there is partnership, there are always fights and a lot of argument, a lot of difference of opinion. So there's always something between the two partners. That is why Islam protects the right of both. The first partner who wants to sell, what do you want? The 100,000? He's giving it to you. Why are you objecting? The only reason he would object is because he doesn't want him to have an easy life. He wants him to suffer with the new partner. And the new buyer, this is not your right. Go and buy any other plot. The money you paid, here is your money. And the partner who is keeping the land, he is, alhamdulillah, feeling safe because now nobody's going to annoy him. With the previous partner, I'm stuck with him. Whether he's a good partner or a bad partner, I'm stuck. But with the new partner, I don't know how bad or evil he's going to be, or he's going to affect my partnership. And this, again, happens a lot in partnership, a lot of enmity, a lot of friction, etc. Now, my friends or my partner's share can move or can be transferred either by selling. So if it's by selling, the partner has all the right to acquire it. This is shuf'ah. If it's not selling, if it's by inheritance, if my partner dies, can I take his portion and pay for it? No, it is inherited. So his heirs would be entitled for having it. And also, if my partner gives it as a gift to someone, do I have the right to intervene for shuf'ah? And the answer is yes, because then I can estimate it and say to the one who it was given as a gift, how much would it charge marketplace? And I give him the money and take it from him. Now, scholars differ. The hadith is clear, but the hadith is specifically talking about real estate. What about if I have partnership in something else? For example, if my friend and I contributed and bought a car, and we have a driver working it as a taxi. So we have partnership in that car. We don't say that the front wheels are yours and the back wheels are mine, and the right door is yours, left door is mine. It cannot be defined. We cannot separate. In this case, does he as a partner have the right of shuf'ah if I want to sell my portion to someone else? The answer is, it's an issue of dispute. And the most authentic opinion is that it is. Anything that two are partners in or more, if one wants to sell, the other has the right to acquire that. But what is the time frame for him to object? Some scholars say a day, 3 days, a little bit more, a little bit less. And the most authentic opinion is that there isn't any specific time frame. It depends on his knowledge and on his objection. For example, if I see my partner selling his portion in front of me and he's signing a contract and I don't say anything, or I say, Mabruk, may Allah bless your dealing. This is an approval. If I don't object to it, if I don't say anything to it, then this means that I am approving it, or I am not at least objecting. However, also it is important to not do any kind of tricks so that I would make it difficult for my partner. Some partners do this. So for example, I want to sell my portion, but I know that my partner will ask for shuf'ah. So what do? I agree with the new buyer and I say, listen, instead of selling it to you for 100,000, we'll ask for 300,000. So I say, halas, I'll give it to you for 300,000. My partner comes and says, no, you have no right. I have the right of shuf'ah. I'll buy it. I say, okay, pay him 300,000. And it's actually 100,000, but I want to harm him. This is haram. You cannot do this because only Allah knows about such transactions and your intention, and Allah Azza wa Jal would hold you accountable on that. We move on to the following hadith, hadith number 292. Now, notice that the previous hadith was 283, and this one is 292. So why is the jump of 9 hadiths? Simply because we're following the order of the book of Sheikh Abdullah al-Bassam, may Allah have mercy on his soul. But the numbering is in accordance to the book of Umdatul Ahkaam. Al-Sheikh al-Bassam thought that it would be appropriate to rearrange the numbers so that it would go side by side by the books of fiqh in the orders of the chapters. So hadith 292 is to be read by? Yes.
Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu said, Allah's Prophet said, no one should prevent his neighbor from fixing a wooden peg in his wall. Abu Huraira said to his companions, why do I find you averse to it? By Allah, I certainly will throw it between your shoulders, narrate it to you even if you don't like it.
May Allah be pleased with Abu Huraira. This hadith highlights the rights of a neighbor over his neighbor, not in the sense of being kind and doing this and not doing that, but in the sense of transactions as well. Because after we spoke about the rights of Shuf'ah, which is between the partners, now also there is the right of Shuf'ah between neighbors, which we did not talk about, but it might be relevant to mention it now. Scholars differ. They say, okay, if I'm a neighbor to someone else, and my neighbor, he's not my partner, he wants to sell his house, do I have the right to have Shuf'ah as well? Scholars say, no, you don't have the right to have Shuf'ah unless there are common grounds between you and him, in the sense that you share the same road, you share the same wall. He's not your partner, he's your neighbor, but because you're sharing something that may affect you negatively, then you may have the right of Shuf'ah. But if your houses are separate and there isn't anything common, you don't have the right of Shuf'ah. And the right of Shuf'ah is forced, not requested. With the partners, I'm forcing the buyer to take his money and leave. I'm forcing my partner who sold it to leave. In the case of a neighbor, I cannot do this unless there is common ground between us. There are things that we're sharing, and for someone to move in would harm me. Maybe he would raise the wall and look at my children and my family, and he's not like the previous neighbor, so this is different. In here, the Prophet ﷺ, as Abu Huraira indicates, is saying something that people usually do not like. And the Prophet is saying, ﷺ, one should not prevent his neighbor from sticking his pig into the wall. You know, like a pillar, like something made of wood. Usually people need to build a higher wall or to have a roof or something like that. And Abu Huraira, when he narrated this hadith, may Allah be pleased with him, everybody was agitated and what you are saying? I don't want my neighbor to do this or that to my wall. And he said that even if you don't like it, I'm going to throw it between your shoulders. Yani I'm going to put it in your face in plain English, even if you don't like it, because this is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. We have a short break. Stay tuned, and inshallah, we'll be right back. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Now, the hadith is talking about the right of a neighbor. And what is the ruling? Is it a must for me to have or to accept my neighbor to come and put his peg in my wall, maybe breaking the wall? Scholars say no. If it includes any harm on your wall or on your house, this is not permissible. You have all the right to refuse. But if it doesn't harm my wall, they say there is another condition, that there is benefit for your neighbor. But if my neighbor is not benefiting out of it, but he just wants to do it, there's no reason for doing it, he just wants to do it, then again, I'm not forced or even recommended to accept. The third thing is, if there is benefit for him and it doesn't harm my wall or my house, am I obliged to allow him? The three schools of thought, the majority say, no, I am not obliged. Okay, so this is what the hadith tells us in regard of how to allow and to assist our neighbors in whatever is good for them and would not bring any harm to us. So we open the floor for questions.
Sheikh, when we allow our neighbor to fix a wooden peg in our wall, if we believe that in future, if we want to alter our homes, and if we break the wall, the house of the neighbor would also get altered and there will be a problem for them. And in future, there might be a situation that this neighbor can claim this wall is mine. So in this situation, can we allow the neighbor to fix a wooden peg in our house?
These are all hypothetical. First of all, if the peg is in your wall, it's not going to be there forever. It is for a purpose for him to make his wall higher or to build a ceiling, and then he would not utilize this. If you want to break the wall, which is yours, you have all the right to do this. Clear it with him and tell him, move your stuff, I'm gonna remove my wall, for example. But if the wall is shared between both of you, so you cannot break it without his permission, because it's in your land and in his land. Secondly, the idea of him claiming that the wall is his is not possible, because you have documentation, you have witnesses. No one can come and say, wallahi, 100 years passed and now it has been transformed into my ownership. This cannot happen. So best not to put hypothetical situations that would hinder you and prevent you from doing something that the Prophet ﷺ instructed you to do. Yes, sir.
With regards to Shuf'ah, Sheikh, is there a hadith which also says that if the neighbor asks to buy your property, even if he offers you a lesser price, then yet he gets the first opportunity?
I do not know any such a hadith, and this is not applicable to my knowledge, because it is not lawful for my neighbor to take my property or my wealth without my approval. So the only possible way is when I'm selling my property, he can intervene and ask and request and demand the Shuf'ah by giving the man exactly as much as he paid. Nowhere, to my recollection, that there is a hadith that is authentic in asking him to reduce the price, because this would be harmful for me. And the rule in Islam, one of the fiqhi rules, we have usul al-fiqh and we have al-qawa'id al-fiqhiyya. One of the fiqhi rules are the hadith, or is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, la darara wa la dirar. What does that mean? It means, roughly translated to, there is no intentional or unintentional harm acceptable. So one would say, Akhi, I need to put my peg in his wall. Okay, la darar. But if your peg is gonna break my wall or break my house, then there is dirar on me, there is harm on me. So because I would uplift the harm from you, this does not mean that I implement it on myself. And likewise, the right of Shuf'ah, because you are my neighbor and I'm moving out, I'm selling, there would be harm if I get 100,000 and you tell me, no, pay me 80. There would be harm on me, and this is not acceptable in Islam, and Allah knows best. Yes, Akhi.
I came across a hadith which said when you're selling a house, the first right of opportunity should be given to your neighbor, number one. And one more thing, like if you consume more from this hadith, you can see there's a duty of the neighbor also. Like in terms of now we see in Mumbai, a lot of towers are coming up. The neighbors are going into the renovation in such a way that it affects the neighbor. So is it showing that the neighbor should have limitation of whatever he does in terms of repair? That also has been shown in this as a duty of the neighbor in doing the repair work to a limited extent that the neighbor's rights are not disturbed.
Again, la darar wa la dirar. If you're renovating your house, you're allowed to do whatever you wish, providing that you do not harm your neighbor. And the scholars usually give an example of the neighbor raising the building. In previous generations, in the old times, they had only one level, maximum 1.5 level, not 8 or 10 or 20 stories high. So there would say that if we have 2 houses, this means that my family can go on the rooftop and they can put their laundry and they can do whatever. They don't have to cover. If you raise your house so that you overlook, this is harm on me. And that is why it is part of the things that a neighbor should avoid. Nowadays, this is not applicable because all high-risers are there. So it depends. There is no harm, intentional or unintentional, and Allah knows best.
Sheikh, I want to know to what extent is this Shuf'ah enforceable? Is it mandatory or is it a code of good practice? Because nowadays, if you take Bombay, the neighbors sell off the house and, we are not even aware. One fine morning we open and we find there is a new man already in. Because this is all done in very secrecy.
Okay, again, this is when Islamic law is implemented. In non-Muslim countries, you cannot force anyone to do anything for you. So in an ideal Islamic country, when the law is implemented, this can be forced, as stated, providing the conditions that the Prophet ﷺ had set, which are that the property is undivided. We are unable to divide it. So only when the partner wants to sell his portion in a property that is undivided, that the other partner has the right of Shuf'ah. But if they are partners in two houses, we buy and sell real estate. So we live in two separate houses, and my neighbor, my partner, wants to sell his portion, which is the house that he lives in. Although they were partners, this is his right, because the roads are defined and the borders are clear. So this is his portion and this is my portion. In this case, he does not have the right for Shuf'ah. And likewise in the neighbor, if my neighbor lives in the 5th floor and I live on the ground floor and he wants to sell, I have no right in saying, no, I will buy it by force, because there are no things that are considered to be joined, and Allah knows best. Yes, Akhi.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
I have a question that if two people have a share in a land, 50-50, and one of the person dies, and he has no heir, so what should be done about that land?
So the brother is asking, if two partners, one of them dies and he does not have anyone to inherit him. This is hypothetical again, but it's possible that one has no offspring, no wives, no relatives, is, cut from a tree, as we say in Arabic. So what is to be done? The answer would be that his money goes to the treasury, the Baytul Mal, the Muslims' treasury. It goes to him, and it doesn't go to the partner. So the partner is not, oh, happy my partner has died, I'll take the whole thing. No. If he doesn't have any lawful heir to inherit, then his wealth goes to the treasury of the Muslims. This is all the time we have until we meet next time. Fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.